Welcome to Fierce Planet Adventures. We're a couple on a mission to live a life full of outdoor adventure, purpose, and passion through self-mastery and personal challenges.
We discovered that there's more to living than suffering and working your life away to support someone else's dream. And many times that fulfillment and joy is found on the other side of pain, fear, and challenge.
Thanks for tuning into Fierce Planet Adventures podcast. We sure would appreciate if you'd like, share, follow, and subscribe on our different platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Today, we want to share our story, our journey of overcoming struggles we faced in our lives through outdoor adventure, self-mastery, and crucible challenges, with the hope that we can be a catalyst, the spark that someone, perhaps even you, needs to take on and conquer the inevitable challenges that life throws at us.
To understand who we are now, you'd have to go back to where we were when we first met. We were both struggling to find purpose and balance, feeling lethargic. Neither of us were in a place we thought we could add more into our lives. But the friendship that developed through our love of the outdoors was exactly what we needed to spark big changes.
Coming from different upbringings and life experiences, I came from a military security and business background, and Kacy came from a creative arts background. We first met while working retail positions at our local REI. That's not uncommon, but the timing in both of our lives was right where we needed it to be for each other.
So about that time, I had just graduated from the Art Institute of Colorado, but I decided to change the direction of my life. I had just ended a long-term relationship, struggling to find purpose, and I was living in an unhealthy way. I was overweight, I was depressed, I was uncomfortable with myself, and I just didn't have the energy or even the motivation to try to change, and I had pretty much all but given up. But that was about the time that I met Andy.
Shortly after moving to Colorado in 1998, I discovered a passion for mountaineering, and I began to volunteer for the Colorado Mountain Club and later founded the Fierce Planet Adventures meetup group. I was organizing and leading groups of people wanting to get out into the mountains, but after some time of leading people into nature and up summits, my health began to dwindle. I was lacking energy, focus, I was struggling with immense pain day to day. Later, we discovered that I was suffering from Lyme disease, but at the time, it was a struggle that led me back to a part-time position at REI and right next to Kacy.
Our friendship at that time began just by going to the climbing gym, which turned into hiking, which turned into peak bagging, Colorado's majestic 13 and 14,000 foot peaks. And I was also struggling at that time to keep up with Andy on our peak bagging adventures. So I was spending a little extra time going to the gym, working out, mainly so I could suffer a little bit less and enjoy the experience a little bit more with him. And that was actually the space that I needed to gain some momentum. So we started encouraging each other through physical challenges. We started to challenge each other. We found purpose in helping each other grow. And then we started spending as much time as possible connecting outside and striving to make it through each work week just to get back to the mountains or find where we're going to drop our next line.
As we pushed and focused on each other, we began to see positive changes in ourselves, in our health and our overall outlook. The sense of accomplishment and the emotional power of overcoming a shared struggle gave us the space we needed to shift our awareness and begin to experience life in a different way. The more we experienced challenges together, the more trust we built. We strengthened our minds, bodies, spirits, and relationship.
And that is part of the magic of the outdoors and sharing the experience or challenge with someone. As you're engaged in activity, you're also immersed in nature. You're focusing on your surroundings and your partner. There may be physical struggles, dealing with negative mental chatter that accompanies stretching outside your comfort zone. But that's where you start to develop mental toughness and resiliency. You remind yourself why you're there. You focus on showing up strong for the person next to you. And you start telling yourself that you can and you will.
When experiences like this are shared with a partner, romantic or not, it excels the intuitional dynamic between those people. For us, because of the intense situations we've been in, we began to connect and read each other in deeper ways, becoming more in tune during times of challenge.
I can recall a time, I think a good example of that was we were canyoneering in Arches National Park, dropping into a particular canyon called Dragonfly. And it did have a couple of potholes, which means it has a few places where it holds water. So you either have to find a way around it or swim through it. We swam through, and it was actually a pretty, well, maybe not chilly day, but a little bit cool, probably in the mid to low 60s. And the wind is just whipping through the canyon. It's spring in Utah. And we pop out of the other side of this pothole to the ledge of our rappel, which is about a 50, 60-foot drop there. And because of the wind and the chill and me being soaked, I started shivering and just losing the ability to move my fingers well, and started not being able to communicate very well. And I probably was on the verge of hypothermia at that point, but that was when you were able to identify the situation I was in and more or less take over and help us move through that.
Yeah, as I recall, after I jumped out of the pothole, you were shivering pretty good, and I think I had you put on a couple layers, and I set up the anchor, and we got it squared away. We got you a little warmed up, and yeah, I don't think we had much communication other than just looking at each other and kind of just intuiting the situation you were in, the space you were in. You were shivering, and there's goosebumps everywhere, and I could just tell you were struggling. So that's all it took, right? Just that eye communication, if you will. So I think, Kacy, the first summer we started going to the Colorado mountains, camping and peak bagging, it was a really rainy summer, like just nonstop all summer long. Every time we went up to the mountains, 2, 3, 4 day trips, it would rain every day, all day. And it forced us into tight quarters and into being comfortable with each other and learning about each other. And I think that was a really important, pivotal growing point for us as well.
Absolutely. You'll hear some people say that you never know how you'll be with another person until you travel together. And I think that was kind of the beginning of some of our travels. And basically it forced us to talk to each other and, like you said, learn about each other, our little quirks and personalities. And yeah, it just taught us how to be comfortable together.
Yeah, let's be clear here, though. I don't have any little quirks. I've got real big ones.
Well, if we're being honest here, I'd have to say the same for myself.
Another example would be our Mount Urey experience. This is Mount Urey in Sawatch County, Colorado, near Buena Vista. We got a little bit late of a start that day. And, I'm at a point with my experience that I know that we probably shouldn't be starting out this late, but it looked like a beautiful day. And we decided to go for it. We get to the summit, and we decide to have lunch, snap a bunch of photos, and then the clouds start building up and closing in on us. And the rain starts coming down. The thunder starts booming, and we know we got to move, right? So on Mount Urey, there's this area from the summit back to maybe the main trail, or, as you're starting to head down the trail, that it's kind of a ridge, but it's not real narrow, but you still have to cross it, right? So we are at this point the tallest thing around, and lightning loves to strike the tallest thing around. So we're moving across the ridge line, and Kacy?
Well, I'll admit I was a little worried at that point, uh, to say the least. But yeah, I looked over at one point and there was lightning striking the next peak over. So I was at a point I was pretty much just expecting lights out at any time. Like, yeah, this is it. Here it comes. I could feel something biting the back of my neck, which was actually just the electricity. And to top it all off, I got a migraine from the pressure that built. So immediately I lost vision. My fingertips were numb. So if you can imagine, you're more or less running or walking as quickly as you can down scree rock fields and unlevel terrain, and I'm using my trekking poles to more or less feel my way down because I can't see what's right in front of me because of this migraine and the lightning and the yeah, it was a pretty scary moment. But then I look up and kind of see Andy in front of me turning back around. He noticed I was falling behind, struggling a bit somehow. So he was actually able to identify that and more or less stay closer in front of me to guide me down the mountain, or at least till I could get enough vision back to see where I was headed. So that was another one of those times that it wasn't a verbal connection necessarily, but we were able to just observe each other and identify a need and act on it.
Earlier, I had mentioned that I was diagnosed with Lyme disease, and I hadn't really known what was going on for quite a while. I had been to a number of doctors in the previous couple years, and each one had a different idea of what it was, but they were all wrong. And it wasn't until a few years later, until after I met Kacy, that I had come to a different clinic, a different group of doctors, through the recommendation of a friend. At the time, I didn't know this doctor was one of the experts in Lyme disease. It just so happened that the universe put me in that place at that time in front of the right person, right? So it was a several year long process to rid myself of the Lyme. But once I started the treatment and I started to get some more energy back, going back out into the mountains and rediscovering that passion was a very powerful catalyst. And I think it really helped me regain my confidence, and spending time with Kacy in the mountains was just exactly what I needed to do to kind of keep moving forward and get my health back in check. And spending time in nature, in the silence of the nature, was a really powerful tool to help me recenter, rebalance, and refocus my life.
You know, that's a really good point. I think it was probably the outdoors and nature that helped both of us overcome where we were at that point in our lives. And I know we had each other pushing and supporting one another, but it wasn't until we were consistently going outside that not only the physical benefits I was feeling from the working out and the hiking, but the mental benefits I was getting as far as the peace of mind, the quiet, seeing the world from a different perspective, and being on those high peaks. The world below you is so small. Everything is so insignificant. And that just gave me so much energy and just something to be excited about, that I was part of this big world, and all those issues that I thought were problems all the time are just, it's just my mind. And the outdoors really helped me change my perspective of how I was viewing life in general. And I don't know if it was that profound for you, but I think the outdoors was a huge key in starting to find balance and starting to overcome a negative space.
Yeah, absolutely. During the Lyme years, I felt constantly weak. I couldn't sleep, but then when the alarm went off in the morning, I was too exhausted and too worn down to even get out of bed some days. I couldn't focus. I had what they call brain fog. I had trouble finding the right words to put into sentences. I had trouble, forming sentences and just speaking sometimes. When it came to writing, it was just a mess. I was a disaster. And once I started getting just a little bit of positive traction with the treatments, getting outdoors was, I think, the magic bullet for me. Um, just the solitude, the serenity, and the sheer beauty of nature in the Rocky Mountain West was just a catalyst and a prescription for me that helped me move along much more quickly, I think, than if I had just stayed in the city and, didn't go outdoors and do anything. So I think for me, another real powerful benefit of getting out into nature is just kind of to wipe the mental slate clean. I think when we spend time in the city at jobs in front of the computers, um, and we don't have a good outlet for de-stressing, we just don't show up in the world very well. At least that was my experience. And for me, getting out on the trail or at the crag and climbing, it acts as kind of a catharsis, if you will, a cleaning of the mental slate, where I can sometimes work out some of the issues that I'm having in my life that when I'm in the city, I just don't have the space to deal with. But when I'm out on the trail, it opens up the space for me to actually contemplate different possibilities, different solutions that I hadn't maybe considered. And I tend to work out a lot of issues or a lot of problems with a small p, that is, in my life when I'm out on the trail, right? You just have that space to just be and listen and think clearly.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I've read that one of the reasons nature is so powerful or is such a profound experience is the simplicity of nature, is that it's just there, it's being. It, like, the tree just grows. It has no expectation for you while you're there. There's no judgment. You can just be outside and just be.
Similar to the mental catharsis I experience when I'm out in the mountains, hiking, mountaineering, ice climbing, rock climbing, snowshoeing, there's also an emotional component to it where whatever things might be weighing you down emotionally, you now also have the space to think about possible other solutions or why those things are bothering you or what actions you might be able to take. It's just a very calming, peaceful place when you're not in the middle of a thunderstorm.
It's
to
true.
to just be.
Something else that sticks out for me as part of where we've been together and how the outdoors have helped shape where I am now is thinking about challenges and emotional stress and overcoming that. So one of the first high peaks we did together, I believe it was 13,000 foot, all I could think was we broke tree line, and I look up at this massive peak looming over top of me, gulping for air, struggling for every breath. I felt like I was moving through molasses. I was so tired. The first thought that crossed my mind was, how the hell am I going to get to the top of that when I can barely move my foot forward? And I almost defeated myself. I could feel my emotions bubbling up. I could feel myself getting upset over the possibility of I may have to turn around. And at the time, it just didn't seem like an option for me. I was there with my new friend who was, turning into much more than a friend at that time. And how was that going to look if I just gave up in the middle of a hike and turned around and went back? So I kept going, one foot in front of the other. I had a mantra. And then I came to a point where I looked behind me and I could see the most of the trail below me and where I had already gone. And I thought, well, heck, look how far we just came in that short little time. And I was just way down there a second ago thinking I was never going to get to the top, but look where I am now. And something about that just sparked something in my mind that, wow, I really can do this, and I'm going to. And I'm going to fight through those negative emotions. And boy, am I glad I did, because once I got to the top and back to camp, those feelings of just accomplishment and self-esteem, basically, that had been pretty lacking in my life, were such powerful emotions. I wanted more. I mean, I was hooked at that point. It was one of the hardest things I had done, one of the hardest hikes I'd ever done. But wow, was the payoff so worth it. So not only just pushing through where I thought I couldn't go, learning that about yourself, that you can do that, was just so powerful and has done so much for me way beyond that.
Yeah, you made a couple of very good points, Kacy. And the first one I think is negativity destroys performance. So when you're able to witness the fact that you've got some negative mental chatter going on, and you're able to stop that and flip it and reinforce it with positive, one foot in front of the other, it's amazing how a person can actually improve their performance. And like you said, once you finally got to the top, it's like, man, look how far I've come. Look what I've done. I think hiking Colorado's high peaks is a great testing ground to build mental and emotional resilience, to test your mettle. I know when I first started taking on some of the peaks, I struggled probably for the first year or two of, maybe doing 12 peaks a summer. And, every time it was, why am I here? Why am I doing this? And then when I got to the top, I'm like, hey, this is why I'm here. This is why I'm doing it. Look at these views. They're just simply amazing. You can't get these views anywhere else. So I realized that my negative mental chatter was trying to get me to quit, I don't know, a mile, 2, 3 miles up the trail. And I was able to, during that time, figure out a way, a saying, a mantra, if you will, a jingle to myself, to get to the peak. In fact, I think sometimes I would even like count paces, right? If I can make it, 500 paces, then I'll stop and take a breath. So it was a mental game for a while. But after I started getting in the groove and I got a bunch of peaks under my belt, then it all went away. It changed. My view of it changed. It was no longer mentally and emotionally difficult. It was still physically difficult, but I had developed my why. And my why, to get to the top of the peak is multidimensional, right? It's not just to get to the summit and see the views. that's a major thing, that it's beautiful, but it's also testing myself, right? Building physical, mental, and emotional stamina to bring back to my everyday life. I mean, if I can take on this mountain, if I can conquer this mountain, then what's going on in my life back in the city, ain't such a big deal, right? Because look what I just climbed. Pretty amazing stuff. So we've talked about the physical challenge, the mental, emotional, and even intuitional benefits of spending time in nature and taking on the physical challenges like climbing some of Colorado's high peaks, 13ers and 14ers, especially with a partner. What we haven't touched on yet is another benefit of developing your never quitting spirit. And again, I think hiking Colorado's 13ers and 14ers, or even California's 14,000 foot peaks, is a great proving ground to develop that never quitting spirit, right? You know, you lean into the challenge. You've got a very strong why that you're doing this challenge, why you're not going to let that mountain beat you. And one success, one win, one peak summited is a catalyst for another, and then another and another. So these small incremental wins develop into big wins. And before you know it, you've got a bunch of peaks under your belt. You're in great physical shape. You've got a better outlook on life, perhaps a bit more mentally and emotionally fit as well. And it just kind of brings it all together, right? It makes it all worthwhile. And now you're functioning perhaps even as a more integrated human being with the rest of your family, with your friends, society, your coworkers. And it's just a really neat feeling.
Yes, it is. And, you know, it was through those little accomplishments and us overcoming challenges together, I think, that led us down the path we're on now.
Yeah. So for those folks that don't know, last fall, we resigned our positions with the company we worked for and decided to sell everything we had except for our essentials and our adventure gear and hit the road to adventure our way across the country. And we started off by going to Wisconsin and adventuring a little bit in some of the state parks around Wisconsin where I've got family. And then we headed off to Eastern Tennessee to our secret Appalachian outpost where Kacy's family is. We took on a bunch of hikes in some of the state parks in the area, as well as the Smoky Mountain National Park. Just amazing territory, right? And we were gearing up for a great spring and summer and even into the fall of Spartan races and heading back to Colorado and taking on the 100 highest peaks in Colorado, as well as a bunch of canyoneering. And then COVID happened.
Yeah, when COVID happened, like a lot of other folks, we had to hit the pause button, had to figure out where we were going to plant ourselves for a little while while the country shut down. Before that, a lot of our plan was to hit different campgrounds and parks, and these were the places we could stay and plop a tent down. But once the country shuts down, including national parks, state parks, campgrounds, makes it a little bit hard to do that. So that was definitely a challenge. Not only the physical aspect of, you know, where are we going to be for the next couple months, but the mental aspect of having to let go of the attachment of all of those plans and those ambitions. Because we were super excited to do the 100 highest peaks of Colorado. That's been a dream of both of ours for a while. And just having to say, nope, sorry, can't do it this time. It was a lot of adjustment. Not just the everyday to day type things, but having to deal with the mental and emotional aspects of basically just changing your life on a dime.
Yeah, it was a great exercise in non-attachment and shifting focus. Um, I think we started doing a lot more physical workouts at home. We started Seal Fit. We continued our yoga practice and our meditation practices. So that was pretty powerful. Um, we tapped into the Spartan virtual races from the area. In fact, I think one weekend, I did 13 laps around the subdivision. I'm talking about boring, but I had Loki, the Wonder Dog, as my coach and trainer for that one. Although I
It's
think
the neighborhood dog.
I think he only got 2 or 3 laps, took his treat, and went home.
And of course, to make things even more challenging, we were both actually dealing with some physical ailments. I have shoulder issues from a couple surgeries. Andy has some back issues from previous injuries, and we were just struggling to find a way to fight through the pain and keep ourselves fit and keep the momentum up so that we could still perform and still get out there and take advantage of the opportunities as soon as the country opened back up.
So that was another layer to the whole COVID, but it's also another opportunity to develop some mental and emotional toughness and overcome an obstacle, right? So I had injured my back pretty good when I was in the Marine Corps many years ago. And since that point, it's always given me issues to some degree, right? You know, if you're on the 1 to 10 pain scale, I'm usually every single day between a 1 and a 3. And that's kind of where I operate most days. And I'm just able to do that now, right? It's just become part of my day. But sometime this spring, my back really started giving me some trouble. And then it migrated to one of my hips. And through the VA, I went and I got some x-rays and an MRI. It showed some compression fractures, some spondylolisthesis, some degenerative disc disease. And it was kind of a punch to the mouth, right? You're like, golly, gee whiz, here I am, I'm getting in great shape. And this thing, it just won't stop hurting. So it was actually a really good time though, for me to start focusing and taking care of this, because most of the country was closed. I was able to get some treatment and am well on my way to a better position or a better place. But through this whole process, we kept going, right? We kept training. And, let's be clear. There's a difference between training pain when it's just, you're just lifting weights or running and you're tired, versus a real structural doing damage pain. And I don't know that we're actually in the doing damage phase at all, but it was kind of a catalyst, right? I'm not going to let these issues define who I am. I'm not going to let them stop me from doing what I love. I may have to change a little bit. I may have to temper things a little bit. I may have to make adjustments with distances and elevation and even the equipment I carry, but I'm not going to let it stop me. I'm going to keep going. And through that, even with the pain, even with the issues, I've still been able to kind of keep my progress going. I've had a couple weeks here and there where maybe I didn't do quite as much, but keeping my why in the forefront, knowing that Kacy and I love to get outside and train together and take on challenges together. It's just a driving force because, let's face it, I can sit down on the couch all day and just make an excuse that, hey, I've got back issues and that's it, right? I don't do anything else. Or I can take those into consideration, make appropriate adjustments, maybe scale some things I'm doing, but still keep after it, still stay fit, still work on getting outside and taking on the obstacles and overcoming the challenges. And I think that's a real important point that some people just don't quite understand is, you can still be productive. You can still take on challenges, even if you have physical issues, physical ailments or disabilities. You perhaps maybe just have to scale them a little bit to fit what you are able to do. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm ever going to be able to get back to carrying, a 50-pound pack for a multi-day backpacking trip, but I can certainly carry a pack for day hikes or, a very light backpacking trip. And I can still do a Spartan sprint obstacle course race. And that's where it's at for me. That's the fun. That's what I enjoy in life. And, it's not something that I'm willing to give up.
So that is another boat that we're in together, having to push through physical pain to still be able to do the things we want to do. And it's not about competition or being better than someone else. It's really just about us being better than we were yesterday.
Yeah, I think my philosophy has evolved over the years. When my time comes, when it's all over and done, yeah, I want to be that person that kind of slid into the grave, just battered and beaten and well worn out from a lifetime of great adventure and wonderful experiences. So yeah, not going to let this stuff stop us. But we had to push pause for a little bit there. So, through it all, we still take on challenges. We refuse to let the obstacle stop us. And like Kacy said, it's not to be better than anybody else, but it's to be the best version of ourselves, better than we were yesterday.
And we are different people than we were when we met. But I think it's that incremental process of building ourselves up from where we were by taking care of ourselves, overcoming fear and doubt, pushing through discomfort and pain, and supporting each other when we were losing our footing. That all played a part in developing a non-quitting spirit, an ability to overcome what may seem impossible. Merging of the heart and mind, leading us down a path of discovering our true potential. We discovered that there's more to living than suffering and working your life away to support someone else's dream. And many times that fulfillment and joy is found on the other side of pain, fear, and challenge.
That, we feel, is a message worth sharing, and we want to inspire and help others find that same fulfillment, that awareness that our perspectives truly shape our realities, and we all have the power to find true happiness. Thanks for tuning in to Fierce Planet Adventures podcast. We sure would appreciate if you'd like, share, follow, and subscribe on our different platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube.
And don't forget, reviews are always appreciated and very helpful. Live fiercely.
Live fiercely.